arms, your legs. Kind of get your vibes a little up, okay? You guys ready? You guys ready to stand with me?
Yes.
You guys ready to stand? All right, thank you. All right, without further ado, it's my honor and privilege, my esteemed privilege, to be able to introduce to you our CEO, our general trainer for tonight. He's no stranger to us. Give it up for Christopher Schloeman.
Smalls in the back there.
Don't do that. Don't do that.
First of all, did Louie do a great job with the recognition tonight?
Yes, he did.
Yes. Fantastic job. And didn't Warner do a great job with all the PowerPoint, the videos, and everything tonight? Give it up for Warner. Sitting on your hands doesn't show appreciation. You're not videotaping this part, are you? I had a conversation with my wife sometime I think over the weekend. And she said, yeah, please, or delete it later, edit, right? And I did something, and then she said something, I'm like, honey, you're not doing it right. She's like, what? I go, that's not typically the words people use or the tone they use when they're showing appreciation, right? She's like snapping at me and myself. I go, babe, I just did this for her, right? So, a little field training in the home, right? A little field training in the home. Hey, how many of you were here last Wednesday for Jim's training? How many of you were not? How many of you were not? Only Tony? Okay, Tony, Raina, Aubrey, you're asking me if you were here?
No.
Yeah. I don't know either.
She was working.
She was working. Deanne, you were here?
Mm-hmm.
All right, here's what I'd like to do real quick. I would like to, thank you. I would like to do a quick review of last week. And then, as usual, I have way more content that we can possibly get into tonight. But quick review, what were the key points that Jim went over last week as it relates to field training? 4 pre-frames. How many of you remember the 4 pre-frames? So, I want you to do this. If you were here last week, write down the first pre-frame in your notes as best you can. Write down the first pre-frame, or at least write down the key word as a reminder of what that pre-frame would be. Like on my data collect sheet, I always write down one word for each one of the 4 pre-frames as a reminder. Everybody got it? No cheating off your neighbor.
Got it.
No cheating off your neighbor. This is not school. This is real life. Actually, in real life you can collaborate. School, they bust you if you collaborate. All right, what's the first pre-frame?
Written plan.
Written plan. Okay, so that's the code word, right?
Yep.
Written plan. How many of you could I possibly call on to give me the written plan pre-frame? By show of hands. How many of you could I call on? Show of hands. Carol, sort of. Jeanette. That's it? That's it? All right, Carol, sort of. Give me the pre-frame.
Not a sort of. Okay, that's right. We believe that everybody would appreciate having a written plan knowledge of where their goals, what their goals are, where they're going, and what they achieve at the end.
Okay, good. Jeanette?
Christopher and Michelle, we believe that everybody's better off having a written plan than not having one. Wouldn't you agree?
Excellent. I like that because it's just tight and to the point. What I've tried to do when I created these 4 pre-frames is here's what I want to do. You're sitting down with a presentation. If any of you have ever been the lucky recipient of somebody's presentation, whether it's at a Starbucks or a kitchen table or somebody wants to present something to you, it's usually like they're just like throwing up all these ideas and all this excitement all over you with like no agenda, no structure. They're just all over the place and you're like trying to follow them. Conceptually, here's what I want to do with the 4 pre-frames. I wanted to create an agenda for this little mini meeting that we're having together, and I wanted to share with them what the agenda is so they know what to expect. I'm a huge believer in setting expectations with people and in situations, and in relationships. So we're setting expectations. So Jeanette and Fitzroy, super excited to sit down with you tonight. The first thing that we want to accomplish with tonight's meeting is to create a custom written plan for the 2 of you. We just believe you're better off having a written financial plan than just sort of winging it. That makes sense, doesn't it? So like, what I've tried to do is that, like, I try and articulate ideas at the level of a fourth grader, where the fourth grader would understand what we just said without talking down to them, right? Okay, good. You just put the first one up there. Second one. Write down what you think the second one is, or the key word for the second one. What do you think the second one is? Do you know number 2? Everybody got a key word for number 2? Who thinks they know number 2 by show of hands? Nice and high. Carol, sort of. James, Jeanette, Louie. Okay, Louie.
Understanding financial concepts or products and capabilities.
Okay, James.
Want to make sure that you understand the products that you have now, and see if you have any questions about those.
Excellent, good. Carol.
Has anyone ever discussed with you the products that you do have legally inventory? We go over the products that you have and answer any questions you have.
Good. Jeanette.
Christopher and Michelle. The second thing we like to do is see what you currently have and help you see if you can understand it. You know, it's been our experience that a lot of people have a lot of financial products, but no one's ever sat down with them to explain how it works and how it works together. That's important to you, right?
Excellent. Here's what I like. It's been our experience, which tells the client this isn't my first time. It's likely your second or third time, but it's not your first because you have experience, right? Louie, you want to give a stab at it?
Like Jeanette? In terms of the script?
Yeah.
Oh, it's Christopher and Michelle. It's been our experience that when clients understand what they have, they're better off with their written plan to be able to accomplish the goals that they have. So we'd like to review that. We think that's important. Wouldn't you agree?
Okay, good. So let me just give you guys just a little bit of feedback. Here's what I like to do with this. The whole concept of selling, there's a basic underbelly to selling, and it's disturb and intrigue. An undisturbed prospect never buys. Okay? Disturb and intrigue. So what I always, and many times consumers have assumptions about what they already have is good enough, or they're already prepared, or they already know what they're doing. And so in this part, in the second step, I want to just challenge that a little bit. So Belinda and Muhammad, the second thing that we'd like to accomplish today in our meeting is we'd like to take a look at all the different financial products and services that you guys currently own and make sure you understand what you own. It's been my experience that a lot of very successful, very smart people oftentimes don't 100% understand what they own. And one of the things that I always say, it's better to understand what you have before you need it. Doesn't that make sense? Okay. So you see how I created just a little bit of doubt without making them dumb? Because I also put in there, like, my experience has been with a lot of successful and very smart people, they don't always understand what they own, right? So I'm creating doubt without making them dummies. One of the things you need to be careful about in all your presentations is not to make your client dumb. In other words, sometimes client has a really bad product or service, you don't want to go like, you moron, what were you thinking when you bought this thing? I can't believe anybody's dumb enough to buy this stuff, right? Because then they're not going to have the confidence to buy from you because they question their decision-making ability. So you got to be careful, but when you disturb it, you need to disturb in a way that doesn't make them wrong or dumb. So number 2 is understand, right? Understand what they own. With the premise being many or most don't. Does that help a little? Yes?
Yes.
Is this the English speaking group? Yes.
Yes.
This is the universal word way we do yes. This is the way we do no. Okay. Very good. Number 3. I can tell this is going to be a long class. Not for you guys, for me. So number 3. How many of you think you know the third one? Jot it down real quick. What's the third pre-frame? Aubrey, no cheating off your mother just because you weren't here. Because the video was on GroupMe and you could have watched it. So that old "I wasn't here" excuse doesn't really hold water. I'm just saying. You're still my favorite Charles child. His name begins with an A. That nothing could ever change that. It's still a privilege. So, what's the number 3? Who thinks they have the number 3 pre-frame by show hands? Isabel, James, Carol all the way in, Jeanette, Louie. Isabel, what's number 3?
We want to make sure we would like to shop around and see if we could lower your cost, improve your rate of return, etc., etc.
Good. James, you want to add to it? Change it, modify it, redo it?
Sure. All right, Kristen, Christopher and Michelle. Third thing we'd like to do is shop the industry, see what if we can either lower cost or increase the rate of return on some of the things that you're now.
Okay.
And you'll make the funding search with us.
Okay. Can I share with you guys something else, a little side note? This is bonus material, no
Yes.
extra charge for this. You don't have to click through or anything. But here's the other premise of these 4 pre-frames. If we don't, you ever been in a situation and you're not sure where it's going to go?
Yes.
And so in the back of your mind, you're fearing the worst. And because you're fearing the worst and holding on to that, you're really not paying attention to what they're saying. Because you're in fear of what you're afraid this is going to go, right? So by going through these 4 pre-frames, what I'm doing is saying up front, we're not going to sell you anything. We're not going to ask you to get out a pen, a checkbook, a credit card. Here's what we're hoping to accomplish in a short period of time. And so that relieves their mind and gives them a chance to be present for your presentation. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So number 3 is what we call shop the market. And there's 5 things that we want to accomplish by shopping the market. So when we say shop the market, here's the way I like to say it. So in number 2, remember we said Carol and James. The second thing we'd like to accomplish tonight, I promise you, every time I've ever done this, 1, 2, 3, 4. I number them. Here's where people get fancy and they don't number them. And so 1 through 4 becomes like one enormous paragraph of googly-gock and people can't wrap their hands around it. I like to go 1, check, 2, do you agree with that? 3, are you on board? I number it and it's very short, it's like deliberate. Does that make sense? Because it's just easier for people to organize in their minds and follow. So number 2, I said, the second thing we'd like to do, Belinda, is take a look at all the products and services that you own and make sure you understand what you own. What we found in my experience is a lot of very successful and very smart people don't always understand what all those products do or are supposed to do for them. And it's better to figure that out before you need them than after. That makes sense, doesn't it? So I just said we want to take a look at all the products and services that you own, right? Is that true? Number 3, I'm going to say the same thing. The third thing we want to do, Belinda, is we want to take a look at all the products and services that you currently own and shop the market. We're in business with hundreds of different insurance and investment companies. So we like to take a look and shop the market. We'd like to see if A, can we lower your costs? That gets their attention right away. That's a good. Would that be a good reason for most people to want to shop the market?
Yes.
Right. Can we get you more coverage for your money? What are we referring to there? Or life insurance. In other words, some people we can lower their costs. Other people bought life insurance based on what they could afford, but they don't have enough coverage. So we may not cut their costs, but what we can do is oftentimes get them way more coverage for the same amount of money they're already spending, right? Or can we reduce their risk in the marketplace or with their investments? Number 4, can we increase their rate of return on their investments? Number 5, can we decrease the taxes on their investments? And then my recap of this, in essence, can we make your money work harder for you? I'm sometimes I'll say, can we make your money work as hard for you as you are for it? Either one's fine.
Christopher,
Yep, Mohammed.
you know, this is the step, the third step. This is where most likely they would say, oh, you know, I'm happy with what I got, I don't need to analyze it. Is there a comeback for that?
I've been doing this 20 years. I don't know if I've ever gotten it once. So if they're likely to do it, they haven't done it with me.
Oh.
My husband did that.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, as Alfonso said, well, may I see what, what other, products you have? And, he says, Mr. Douglas, may I see yours? And he goes, no,
So, well,
I'm happy with what I have.
Under-
Talk to my wife, she's the one who
so
called me over.
understand this though. Alfonso doesn't do these 4 pre-frames. So what I didn't say was, can I see your stuff? And there's a reason I don't say, can I see your stuff? Because
Well, he
people
didn't
are like,
say that like that.
no, I understand, but that's the reason these are called pre-frames and not commitment-based questions, is because they're a soft approach to getting people to look at things from a different perspective. The fact of the matter is, if I asked you guys to take off your clothes tonight, would you feel comfortable doing that for me?
Without
Adam's saying yes. Adam, coachable, you're alive. The dog right there, reshuffling in the base shop mentally right now. If I was your doctor for the past 10 years, and not your financial advisor or your coach, if I was your doctor for the past 10 years, and we weren't in an office setting, but we were in a private room inside of a medical facility, and I said I need you to, then would you feel more comfortable?
And
Yeah, no, yeah, I got a headache. Okay, well, let's start off by disrobing. Assuming the circumstances were appropriate. Right? But my point is this, is that contextually, right, context makes it different, and the way that your doctor wouldn't go, I know it's going to sound awkward, but would you mind taking off some of your, because they're so used to just saying, all right, I need you to disrobe now, and people just go and boop, disrobe. Never questioning that. Much like Mohammed, the reason that you get good at the words is because when you get good at the words, you're not expecting them to have a question or objection there, right? And the reason, Belinda, I've never been able to be as direct as somebody like an Alfonso, so I had to learn how to do things in a softer way that got me the result. But, yes. Can you ask a question?
In a sequential way, no?
Yes. So start off with and you always want to start with the softest, easiest commitments, and then slowly you build your way up to more significant commitments. Because that gets people used to agreeing with you or doing what you're asking them to do, right? So, written plan, I want to help you to understand what you've got. There's no threat in that. And we've made a pretty good case for it, because a lot of successful and smart people don't fully understand what they got. Has been my experience. Number 3, shop the market. Take a look at the products and services that you already own and see, is there anything you can do to lower your costs, or maybe get you more coverage for the same amount of money? Can we reduce your risk in the marketplace? Can we increase your rate of return? Can we lower your taxes in some way? So the other thing I'm doing here, Belinda, is I'm being very, very specific about why I want to look at them. I'm not leaving it up to you to figure out and just assume that it's obvious. I'm being very specific. I'm very slow. I'm not rushing to say, give me the statements. I never even said statements. I haven't even asked for statements. I'm just saying part of the process is for us to review these things and shop the market, right? And then what's number 4? Everybody write down number 4. What's the key word? Key word, and who knows what it is? Raise their hand. Isabel, Louie, Jeanette, James sort of, Carol all in. Jeanette.
Christopher and Michelle, the 4th thing we'd like to do is take a look to see what interest you may need, and we'll shop around and make some recommendations for you.
Okay, so that's close. You guys know what the telephone game is?
Yes.
What's the telephone game? Yeah. It distorts a little bit because people don't use the exact words. They use their own words that they think mean sounds, and then that keeps happening and it gets distorted very, very quickly, doesn't it, right? So, I was the one who created this, that our hierarchy is used for years, so let me be clear on this. We've already said here in number 3, we're going to shop the market and try and do these things. So if we find them a lower cost or a better rate of return or lower risk, obviously we're going to give them the opportunity to recommend that they switch, right? So what's the difference between this and a new recommendation? Here's what's the difference. Silton and Reina, the 4th thing that we'd like to accomplish, notice I said the number again. I can't even not do it. It's just so ingrained in my habitually in my language, right? Reina, so the 4th thing that we'd like to accomplish tonight is take a look at anything that you guys might own and make new recommendations where appropriate. Here's what I mean by that. Because I'm not leaving it to assumption. Here's what I mean by that. A lot of young couples, for example, that I sit down with that have dependent children would like to someday help their children go to college. But they haven't started a specific savings account for their children's college. So I can't help them I can't explain something to them that they don't own, and I can't shop something in the market that they don't own. But what I can do is explain, like, here's the 5 or 6 or 7 most common alternatives for saving for a kid's college education. Here's the expenses, here's the upside of each one of them, and that's what we call a new recommendation. Does that make sense? Do you see where a new recommendation is different than shopping the market? By the way, when you're sitting down with 25 to 55-year-old married couples that have dependent children that own a home, right? There's a lot of them that don't have money saved for kids' college. And that is a new recommendation. Okay? And then the 5th to me is just as important as the other 4. I changed it to the 5 pre-frames. Years ago, I know Jim still calls it the 4 pre-frames. The 5th is, Belinda, is there anything that you'd like to add to tonight's agenda? Now, 96.3% of the time, I click my research. 96.3% of the time, they go, golly, no, that seems like everything, because it is everything. But sometimes there's a point of emphasis that's important. You know, we'd really like to talk about kids' college, or we'd really like to talk about our 401k. I didn't say specifically anything about 401ks here, so they want to make sure that we talk about that and they'll add it. You know what, we have debt issues. We really would like to get some ideas from you on getting that. That's terrific. I'll make sure we spend enough time covering that on you and be sure that you ask any questions that you have. I want them to know this is not an agenda I'm doing at them. This is something we're doing together. And that's why this 5th one is so important. Because it enrolls them in, what do you, like, these are the kinds of things that we're going to be talking about tonight. What would you like to add to tonight's agenda? Does that make sense? Yes?
Yes.
Any, Belinda?
Can you give this to them prior to your meeting?
What do you mean, give this to them?
Like, we're gonna go over to a friend's house, and we're going to have meeting regarding the 4 pre-frames. And let's say hypothetically, they say, you're coming to my house, and you can be asking me personal questions about my finances, how much money I make.
So, and the answer would be no. Here's the process. Okay, here's the process. We have a first appointment, and we call that an ASAP appointment. Okay, everybody clear on that?
Yes.
It's really important that you guys understand the process. The ASAP appointment is designed to be 25 to 30 minutes in length. It's the 7-page presentation that we do. At the end of that presentation, there's a 3x5 or 5x7 business review card that we have them complete. Okay? We're not asking them personal information during this appointment. We're not closing them. We're not asking for applications. We're not asking them to buy anything. It's a 7-page presentation. This is also considered a training appointment. Okay? The second appointment is what we call a data collect. That's where we do the 4 pre-frames. That's where we collect their personal data. And that's where we go through the 5 commitments at the end. Everybody clear on that? Any questions? So if you have questions. Third appointment. Where's Donald Woodbush tonight? Huh? Does anybody have his number?
Thank you.
Will you text him? Schloeman's asking where you are tonight. Third appointment is a closing appointment, or it's also called a recommend appointment. Sometimes not much in our hierarchy, you'll hear it be called a carryback.
Is the second appointment also something that we refer as an A and recommend?
Sure, an F and A is, so Warner just said it's a second appointment also called an F and A, that's true. F and A stands for financial needs analysis. Yes. Yeah. The financial needs analysis could be this, or the F and A could also be like the product of your data collect. In other words, you collect the data, put it in the software program, here's your financial needs analysis. That's what we often, sometimes we call it the dream map, sometimes it's called the financial needs analysis. Good. So the third appointment is oftentimes called the closing or the recommend. Now I'm going to screw things up for you guys. Let me give you guys just a bit of context. So I covered this number. So with like Dean's team and most teams outside of my hierarchy, the first appointment and the second appointment are one appointment. That's typically your first appointment. So typically they have a 30-minute appointment, and then somewhere between a 45-minute to an hour and 15 data collect. So a first appointment is typically an hour easy to as long as 2 hours for most other hierarchies. We don't teach it that way, and it requires both the husband and wife to be there. What we did was we designed something called the ASAP appointment, and we made this an individual appointment on its own for a couple of reasons. Number one, the length. It's easier to get an appointment with somebody if you ask them for a 30-minute appointment, and if you actually believe it's a 30-minute appointment, right? Number two, it's easier for the trainee to learn a 7-page presentation that lasts about 25 minutes long than it is for the trainee to learn an hour to 2-hour presentation. It's just overwhelming, right? Number three is this ASAP appointment. We allow it to be run with what's called a one-legged appointment, which means spouse missing. So in other words, Louis and I work at the church together. He just got started with the company. He calls me to set up an ASAP appointment, but my wife Michelle has never met him. If he's calling to set up a normal appointment that's an hour to 2 hours long, and he says, your wife has to be there, and I go home and I'm like, hey babe, my buddy Louis from work is, and she's like, I don't want to do that. Who's this Louis guy? I've never met him before. Like, it could be a real roadblock, right? But if it's just Louis calling me to set up this training appointment, I'm like, yeah, sure, dog, no biggie. He's like, now it'd be great if Michelle could be there. If she can't, it's okay. And I go, yeah, I don't think she'd really be into this. So he schedules the appointment just with me. It's okay. So,
what does ASAP stand for? What?
It actually stands for something other than that. I don't recall what it is.
Okay.
I don't recall what it is.
Goes not
Yeah. But good question. That's a fair question. So why is Louis able to set it with just me? Because here's how we designed this. Here's the analogy we've always used. It's like when you go to the movie theater before you see the main feature, you're going to watch the trailer to 5 other movies. The trailer is never longer than 3 minutes, and in 3 minutes you know, am I going to like it? Will my spouse like it? Will my kids like it? Will me and my spouse like it? You know immediately. You don't need more than 3 minutes of a trailer of a movie to figure out if it's your kind of movie or not. True or not true?
True.
What this is for us, this is the trailer to the main feature. We figure if you sit down with one of our agents for 25 to 30 minutes, we share 7 pages of quality content or ideas with you. We do it in a professional, non-salesy, non-aggressive, non-assertive way that many people will say, I like the trailer, I'm interested in the main feature. Does that make sense?
Christopher, this is from my experience, yours may be different, but I've noticed that people lose focus very quickly. They start talking about baseball or NFL or politics or start fighting with the spouse or whatever, and they lose focus so much that it's difficult to stay on the track,
So we'll teach that in later classes.
Okay.
That's something you either allow to happen or you redirect. In other words, if you go, my youngest son goes to the Loving Savior School over here. In some of those classrooms, the children run amok and do whatever they want.
Right.
In others, they better raise their hand before they get up to sharpen their pencil or go to the bathroom. It's the same group of kids, it's a different teacher.
Absolutely.
So we got to teach you how to be a teacher that knows how to conduct this classroom.
Okay.
Yeah. So
the only reason I was wanting to know what that was, I'm sure Carl.
thank you for raising your hand, because that's the kind of classroom I run.
So do I.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
You trained him well. Yeah.
We'll talk about that later.
You got it on video. Everybody's going to be talking about that.
So I work in a world where we deal in acronyms, so that's why I asked it. But the
It's a
thing
good
I like
question.
about that actually is because when admission reps come to me with potential students and they're getting ready to spend $45,000 for their education, guess who closes them? I do.
Yeah.
I do it in 5 minutes. And they always say to me, wow, man, you close them. We don't want to haven't talked to anybody but you. And I'm like, well, I know it's going to be here.
Right.
I'm
going to close this instead.
There you go. There you go.
Christopher,
Yeah.
I think the difference between the first, the second and the third is this. You disturb. You raise their awareness, you disturb, and then they say, oh, no, I want this. You disturb and intrigue, which leads to the second. That's it. Disturb and intrigue.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's different because each one of these were disturbing and intriguing.
But this one, the
Different
first one, will lead to the second.
Yeah, but then the second leads to the third.
Of
Yeah.
course.
Belinda.
If you're meeting at your client's house, and I think you addressed this, but I just don't remember, brain pain. What do you do when they have, this is true, 5 dogs all over you, all over them? Shut up, be quiet. You couldn't.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So-
I know
That's there are things specifically that we'll teach you in future classes. There's a whole do's and don'ts class that we're going to
You
go
don't
through
want to tell
about
your
addressing.
client, put the dogs away.
Well, I mean, there comes a time where it's appropriate to, but it's how you say it. It's important. Like, I don't mean to be rude, but we promised we'd be out of here in 30 minutes, and we have 2 appointments after this. So, would it be possible maybe for you to put the dogs in the back or something, just so we could stay on time and get out of here in time? Like, there's a way respectfully that you can ask that to be done. And I'll do this a lot when, like Muhammad, you were talking about somebody wants to go. We'll get deeper into this, but when you're in rapport with somebody, if I'm sitting here presenting to James and his wife, and I'm leaning forward and showing the presentation, James naturally is going to be leaning forward, right? If he starts to talk about something I don't want him to talk about, like the NFL or the AIDS crisis in Africa or something like that, right? I'm going to lean back and just glance at my watch. Just glance. I'm not going to go like. Just by virtue of we're both leaning in and I lean back just a little and just subtly do this, subconsciously he's like, I like it better when he was leaning forward because we felt more close and more connected, and now it feels disconnected. his words on he automatically brings it right back to center.
Okay, that's a good idea.
It's like the dog whistle. You
Are
know,
you going to teach us how to recognize when they want to get rid of us?
yeah. When they give you the check. That's your sign here. Here's my money, please leave. What are you guys laughing about? That's how my clients ask me to leave.
For the
I
second
train them to ask me to leave that way.
for the second appointment, when you are collecting the data, and this could be a result of not setting the expectation in the first appointment about having your spouse with you in the second appointment. But what if it's the case where something happens to the spouse over time, something at work or anything else? What do we do in that case where in the second appointment when we are collecting data, it's important for the two to be there? Do we still run the appointment without the spouse? Do we?
So now we're sort of getting into gray areas, but because we can go on 1,000 different tributaries. What if? We're going to try and cover a bunch of those, but this is an isolated appointment in and of itself. Okay. What I would like to get through tonight is how do we go from here to here? How do we close on this and go from here to here? Okay. So that's what I'm hoping to, but we don't have to. We can. I mean, it may take us more time. The data collect is an appointment on its own. Now, as soon as I say that, Belinda and I might have 3 of these on Monday night. We're on the 3rd one, and at the end of the 3rd one, I give them the business review card, and then Mohammed and his wife check. We'd like to have a financial plan done, and we'd like to go to the meeting to learn more, right? And I'll say, okay, Mohammed, I see that you checked that you'd like us to do the financial plan. We can do 1 of 2 things, totally up to you. You're our last appointment this evening, so I don't have an appointment after you. We've already been on 2 before this. If you'd like, I can stay another 10 or 15 minutes and just collect the information necessary for that financial plan. Or if you prefer, we can schedule time to come back next week to do that. It's really up to you. What most clients will do at that point is go, oh, go ahead right now and do this.
Yeah, that's true.
But if they don't, I'm totally okay to come back.
That's true.
Totally okay to come back. I'm not pushing to try and make it happen. If I got a strong commitment to come back, I'm fine with it. If I've just met with Muhammad and his wife isn't there, then I'm going to schedule it for a time that she is. And I'm going to let them know, like, hey, it's great that we got this started. I'm excited to meet with you. On the next step, here's what we need to do. Obviously, your wife needs to be there because it's important for, there's going to be certain ideas that we're going to need her input on. Even if you make all the financial decisions, we're going to want her input on. And also, I think long term, they say 70% of women at some point in their lives will be completely responsible for the family's financial situation. So better that we start having that conversation with her now before it's sort of thrust upon her in the future. Does that make sense?
You tell her that? Tell him that?
Oh, sure.
Oh, some people get offended, tell him that. Feel like, oh, what do you mean, I'm the boss, blah, blah, blah,
Yeah, but I'm not sure if you understood what he was saying. He's saying later in their life, women become responsible because the husband dies first.
Yeah, because the husband dies, or is incapacitated, or is in an assisted living home. Yeah. So I'm not saying that they're not competent to do that. Just like it's likely at some point, most cases, the woman outlives
the circumstances would make a
Yeah. James.
If you're running an ASAP here in the office, would you still recommend doing a data collect here, or would you rather put go home and get the full?
If the husband and wife are here, no, I'm fine to do it here. I don't have to collect all the data on the data collect. I don't have to collect all the data. What I do have to get is the 5 commitments. Any data that they don't have, they can always get to me. They can email it, the trainee can pick it up. There's so many ways to get missing statements and stuff. I don't get caught up in that. What I get caught up in, what I'm trying to teach you guys, the 4 pre-frames, I get caught up in a big bad way, and I spell them out 1, 2, 3, 4. It's not a narrative. Some people think you sound smoother if it's a narrative. I don't want to sound smooth, I want to be deliberate. Number 1, here's the first thing we do, Muhammad. Number 2, here's the second thing we're hoping to achieve, Belinda. Number 3, James, right? And the 5 commitments. The 5 commitments is when you make the sale. Now granted, you're coming back on another appointment, and they're going to write you a check on it. They're not writing you a check when you get the 5 commitments, you're not filling out an application, but emotionally, mentally, that's when the sale is made. You're just coming back to do the paperwork later. But you want to get the commitment here that we're going to do business. Muhammad.
Which term do you like better, data collect or I need necessary information?
Well, data collect is what we call it here. I don't call it a data collect necessarily.
Oh, you don't call it in front of me.
What I'm going to explain here is the process.
Okay.
And so this is what we call it here from a standpoint of training and letting people know where we're at.
What do you call in front of the prospect?
Maybe I call it a data collector too. I don't even know. It's like
I would call it review and analyze.
Yeah.
well, I'm like as I think about it, like I mean, what I always do. Americans are unbelievably indecisive. And I've shared this example before. If you don't think so, ask a friend or a work colleague tomorrow to go to lunch and ask them where they want to go. Oh, I don't know. Where do you want to go? I don't know. Where do you want to go? I don't know. Where do you like? They can't even decide where to go to lunch. So the last thing I want to do is to ask them gigantic financial decisions that are going to impact the rest of their life and their children's gen, right? So I'm always minimizing things. So if I'm sitting down with Raina and Silton and we're going from here to here, you know, I'm going to sit down. I'm going to go through the 4 pre-frames. Right? Raina and Silton, we believe it's important to have a written plan. We believe it's important for you to understand what you got. Right? We want to take the time to shop the market, see if we can lower your costs, increase your rate of return, reduce taxes, blah, 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 make your money work as hard for. We want to make new recommendations where appropriate, if they're appropriate. Here's what I mean by that. Is there anything that you'd like to add to today's agenda? You guys say yes or no or whatever. Then I go, okay, great. Let's get started. Let's get started. And then I'm just going to ask them the first question. So I'm not going to say, I'm going to do a data collect to you, or I'm going to do a financial review to you. I'm just going to ask them the first question. And typically on the data collection form, I'm going to not ask the first question. I'm going to go to what's a softball. What's an easy question for them? A non-threatening question. In other words, going back to the doctor analogy, if I was going to ask you to disrobe, but instead of just asking you to completely disrobe, I might ask you, you know what, Muhammad, would you mind taking off your hat for a moment? That's a very of everything you're wearing, that's probably the least threatening thing to do. Then I might go, hey, you know, would you mind taking off the tie? Right? I'm going to start, right? I'm going to go for the boxers last. Why? Because it's the most threatening piece of information. But if I've worked my way to the point where only the boxers are left, there's a good chance I'm getting them too. Does that make sense? Linda, you never knew insurance could be this fun, right?
But look at what the title is. This is the cover of the financial needs analysis. So if that's comfortable for you and then you don't have to remember a different phrase, you say, gather some information through using my financial needs analysis.
Yeah, but here's what I would say, Carol. Like,
I think he was worried
no,
about the words.
I understand, but I want to give them the words. I don't like those words. And here's why I don't like them, is most of you don't have sales experience. And I don't want you to try and be a salesperson. And I don't want your clients to feel like you're trying to sell them something. And so there's a time and a place to use big words and seem impressive. And there's a time and a place to dumb it down, and most of the time, dumbing it down wins the game. Most of the time, when you speak in jargon and use words that they're not familiar with and show them how smart you are, most of the time, they tune out, you lose rapport, you don't get the outcome that you're looking for. So that's, like, I had to literally go back into my head. I'm like, I don't know, what do I call it with a client? And so that's literally why I came back to here. I go, okay, if I'm sitting down with Raina and Silton, and I just went here, what do I say when I go from here to there? And I go, well, I just say, okay, and I just ask them a question right off the data collect. I just ask them a question that I know is an easy question that I'm 100% convinced they'll answer. Does that make sense? If they've already talked a lot about kids' college education, maybe I'll start there. If he's already mentioned, hey, I just switched jobs and I have some issues with my old 401k, maybe I'll start collecting information there. If they brought up life insurance, whatever they brought up, I'm most likely to start there, or maybe I'll start with the goals and dreams section because it's not threatening. Hell, let's spend some time talking about where does you guys want to get to, what's the future look like, blah, 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 blah. But I'm not calling it a financial needs analysis, I'm not calling it a data collector, I'm not calling it anything. I'm just starting to collect information. It's like when you go to the doctor, you don't need him to tell you the name of some surgical tool he's using on you. What you need him to do is help you to heal. Right? And I'm there to help them heal. And so I'm doing it. We're way off track, but we talk about the business format system often in the business, and we talk about the 8 speed filters. The best way a new associate learns about the business format and the 8 speed filters is not by talking about it, but by us doing it to them. Like, oh, I remember when I went through that step, and I remember when they had me do this or that. Experience is the best teacher. So I'm not calling it anything to them as much as I'm just going, okay, here's the next thing, the next thing. And the easier questions you start with, then you work your way. Here's what I'll do. Matter of fact, going through the data collect, and tonight's training's not even on the data collect. You know what I'll do sometimes? You know how you said, well, some people are like, oh, I don't want to show them whatever, right? I'll go through a bunch of easy questions, and I'll finish the data collect, and I'll start to close it like it's over, and I'll go, oh, crud, I completely forgot. By the way, Sil, what did you earn last year? And it's like it's like the old Columbo show. You know, where he's leaving, oh, he's got his hand up, he's like, you know, well, by the way, why is that huge bloody machete sitting over there, right? And it's just like, Louis like, oh, right? Like he always asks like the killer question as he's halfway out the door, right? And so sometimes if there's a question I think is going to be sensitive, I'll literally act as if I'm done, I'll close it, or I'll do one more look over and I'll go, oh God, I completely forgot. By the way, I never get any resistance.
Good, very good.
I never get any resistance.
Well, Brandon just said something. A doctor doesn't really know what they're going to do to you until you tell them what the symptoms are.
Right.
Right. Find their symptoms. What's wrong with that? And everybody has something wrong with them. I don't care who they are.
None of you guys do, but a lot of them out there do. Right. So, this is step 1, this is step 2, and I just want to let you guys know, occasionally we'll do both steps together. It doesn't happen very often, but occasionally we will. Okay? This is the 3rd step. I also happen to believe from a learning standpoint, this makes it much easier for a new trainee to learn when it's isolated. And then I call this paint by numbers. Because literally, the majority of the questions you're going to ask them are printed on the data collect. It's fill in the blank. So, it's easier to, if you've already learned this, to learn this in isolation, where other than the 4 pre-frames and the 5 commitments, all of this, you're filling in blanks. You're just asking them the questions on this cardboard sheet. So that makes it easy to learn this. So I think we speed up the process of you learning how to be independent by these things. Now the 3rd step takes a little bit more time often to learn because there's more different nuances, more different directions it can go. Okay? Yeah.
What is the 5 commitments?
Jim talked about them last week. I don't know that we'll get to them. I guess we will because truthfully, like I've got this unbelievable presentation on closing this that we'll do next Wednesday. If I'm on tap next Wednesday. I don't know if I'm training or not next Wednesday.
I think you gave us just on a handout.
Yes, okay. Yeah, I remember.
So, but much like we went through scripting in the 1st quarter, like I'm here to tell you guys, the 7-page presentation, you want to get comfortable with it. But, like, I want to be clear about this. I'd write this in my notes. The 7-page presentation, I want to get comfortable with. And that's, I'm using the word comfortable with on purpose. I'm choosing that word specifically. The 7-page presentation, I want to get comfortable with. I don't need you to nail the 7-page presentation. I don't need you to master the 7-page presentation. I need you to get comfortable with it. What do I mean by comfortable with it? If I'm flipping it upside down so that Carol can read it, I'm comfortable enough with it where upside down I know what's on the pages. I'm not confused because it's upside down, and when I'm flipping this page, I know what's on the next page. Because I've flipped the page enough times, so I'm comfortable with it. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Some people get so caught up in the 7-page, most training agents get so caught up in the 7-page presentation and the words of it. I want you to get comfortable with it. What I want you to become an assassin at, well, is like the 4 pre-frames and the 5 commitments. On the ASAP appointment, what I want you to become an assassin at is the 3x5 business review card, okay? The Bill Gates story. Are you ready for this one?
Yes.
Nobody else is going to teach you this. Uncovering opportunities. Who knows what I mean by uncovering opportunities? Yes, so the truth is, most trainees go through this focused on this 7-page presentation and getting it right. Quite frankly, too many trainers focus on going through the 7-page presentation and getting it right, or too many trainers are worried about the trainee when the trainee is doing it, them getting this right. I'm gonna over make a point, over exaggerate a point to make a point. Okay? It's BS. It doesn't matter. Like the ideas and the concepts in there, like Carol said, like to intrigue. Like there's good ideas, there's good concepts in there, but it's not the meat of the story. It's more or less an appetizer. It's a distraction at best. Now, does that mean that the compound interest and the Rule of 72 and the cost of waiting and the 3 tax practices, those are all wonderful concepts. But people aren't going to jump from this step to this step because of the Rule 72. God, oh, honey, we got to meet with this Louis guy from work because he taught me about the Rule 72. Wait till you see this thing. It's going to blow your mind. Said nobody ever. Right? It's not going to happen. Nor is like the 3 tax boxes, babe. Wait till you see this. You're not going to believe it. It's not going to happen. So as great as those ideas and concepts are, the better ideas are the ones that cause someone to go from here to here. Does that make sense?
Yes.
2 minutes, so if you've got to guess what you do, Silton, and I'll be in there in just a moment. Steve, so would you like Louis or Warner to help out in or Jeanette? Well, until I get in there, are you good?
I think I want Louis to come.
Okay. Louis, you're the next victim. So let me just finish this point because I want to go to meet Silton's guest real quick. Because I was fine-tuning this unbelievable presentation for tonight that we never opened. There's nothing about this that's going to cause your prospective client to go here. Nothing. That's not an exaggeration, that's the truth. It in no way invalidates the quality of these ideas or the importance of them. It's just so here's the oldest saying in the world when it comes to like the sales process in general. A guy goes to the car dealership, right? And the salesman gets the keys in his hand and the guy goes for a test drive. And when the guy's test driving the car, he's like, man, wait till the ladies see me in this. Or, holy cow, this thing like accelerates like no car I've ever been in. Or man, do I feel like bad. You know what I mean? It's like there's some emotion that comes out, whether you're a man or a lady, when you're test driving the car. It makes you, like when you find the right car, it makes you feel a certain way. Whatever it is. I feel very economical and pragmatic because of this, you know, maybe if they're buying a Prius or something, right? Or I feel super safe if it's a Volvo, right? But there's some emotion that's evoked. But when the salesman closes them and they give them the keys and they take the car home, they don't go, James, dude, I bought this car because, dude, I just feel like... No, they're like, well, it's got a V8 and it's got this and the torque. And, like, they give you the logical stuff, but that's not why they bought. It was the emotionals. People buy for emotional reasons. Write this in your notes. People buy for emotional reasons. They justify it with logical reasons. People buy for emotional reasons. They justify it with logical reasons. People buy for emotional reasons. They justify it with logical reasons. Okay?
Like a teenager.
Well, yeah. My wife married me because of the way I made her feel. And she justified, well, he's really not that bad looking, right? I could have done worse. I should have seen the last guy, right? She justified it with logic, right? So, there's great logic in here for them, but that's not what causing them to move forward. So, the uncovering opportunities, as you're going through those 7 pages, you don't have the 7-page presentation handy where you can throw it up there, do you? Can you do it real quick because I don't want to let something down. So as you're going through, for example, like you're going through, maybe you can pull up the product provider page and it says all the different things we do. We do insurance and mutual funds and 401ks and annuities and all that sort of stuff, right? What a lot of people do when they're going through the presentation, they go, are you familiar with any of these companies? Nationwide, right? And they go, oh yeah, my 401k is ran by Transamerica, and the agent goes, oh, that's great, so you've heard of us. And then they go through, here's all the different things that we do. Annuities, 401k, life insurance, blah, 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 right? And they go, oh yeah, I've got one of those at work. And they go, oh great, so you're familiar with those. And then they go on to the next page. This is where you uncover opportunity.
Yeah, there were 2 opportunities.
Yes. So go back to that. So they go, oh, Transamerica, yeah, their name is on our 401k statements. I think you guys do our 401k. Go, oh, really? So tell me about that. Like, how long have you been participating in the 401k? Do you have other retirement savings vehicles, or are you just using the 401k at work exclusively at this point? This is a chance to begin uncovering opportunities. Understand what are they doing and why they're doing it. And then they go on and go, oh yeah, well, I've heard of Nationwide before, right? They got those Pink Manning commercials. They do life insurance, right? I go, yeah, they do life insurance. Do you guys have any life insurance outside of work, or do you just have life insurance at work? It's a completely non-threatening question. It's not in the presentation. But I'm using the presentation to spark a conversation, to find out what am I going to close them on the 3x5 card to get them to go here to the next step. Does that make sense? You with me, Tony? So then on the 3x5 card, do we have one up here? We don't. Would you mind just real quick? Is this good stuff so far?
Yes.
Excellent.
Do you wish we had more time together? Because I should do.
Yes.
I could do this for like 4 hours and we'd still
I was
just be...
thinking, walking through a warehouse, helping sales, because I was the subject
Yes.
matter expert, sell stretch wraps. But I look in the warehouse, oh my gosh, they buy Bible, they buy this, they buy that,
I
they buy
remember.
that.
Yes.
So, yeah, it's...
The sales guy never saw it, and
No.
you did. That's why I said, like, you've got this natural ability that just has not been tapped yet. Just hasn't been tapped yet. So, when I'm going through this card after the ASAP appointment and the client's checking it off, it says complimentary consultation with a licensed trained professional to review my financial goals. Now, Belinda, I know when we were in the presentation, you were talking about you've got that 401k from Transamerica, and you said that you had some insurance at work, but you didn't have any insurance outside of work. You know, it'd probably be a good idea to check that box because we could review that 401k for you and make sure that you're in the best investments for you. And we could also review the life insurance to see if that's the best cost for you. So I'm giving her a reason to check the box. Not just like, here, I hope she checks all the right boxes. Right? Or, remember the rule 72? Think you should check one of those boxes. Really? Right? So, uncovering opportunities is what I want to teach you guys to get great at, not the 7-page presentation. I want you to get comfortable with the 7-page presentation. You just get comfortable with the 7-page just by going through it a bunch of times. I mean, like, we spent the first quarter on scripting. I'm not all caught up in the scripting of the 7-page. Do we have scripts and words and suggestions? Yes. I'm just not that uptight about it. What I am uptight about is the specific words related to how you close on the 3x5 card. I'm going to really teach you how to get good at uncovering opportunities, and I can teach you how to use the Bill Gates method. Does that make sense? All right. I would love to go on and on and on and on. But I want to go meet some guests for him. So, we put on a jacket. We already did recognition. We'll have this video on GroupMe before you go to bed tonight. Like last week with Jim's video. If you haven't watched Jim's video, I'd encourage you to watch it 3 or 4 times, or listen to it while you're driving to work. Or I was listening to a podcast this morning when I was in the shower and getting ready. I do that oftentimes in the morning. Like, find dead times where instead of having the TV on or the radio, where you can, you want to hear some of these so many times that you know what they're going to say before they say it. And that's where it starts to say, that's where you sort of know it. That's where it becomes reactionary for you. So whether it's tonight's or Jim's is probably better with this stuff, but there's some good ideas that you heard once tonight that you're not going to remember. Because there's too many ideas that hearing them once, you're just not going to remember in a way that you're going to be able to use. If I talked about them again, you would remember them. But when you're in these situations, you're not going to remember them. Because they're not ingrained, right? You want to ingrain them by one of the ways, God bless you, not the only way, but one of the ways is watching the video over and over. And going through this more, okay? I hope that helps. I wish it could stay longer. Appreciate you guys. Saturday's going to be unbelievable. Schloeman Bake Shop, we cleaning up.
Yay!
What's up, Jose? Good to have you down there.